All right, and welcome back to the North Texas Eagle Patreon podcast. And this morning, I'm joined by a very special guest, the General Manager of North Texas football, Errin Joe. How are you doing this morning? I mean, fall camp is in a couple days. How are you feeling? How are you doing overall in this role?
I'm anxious, man. I feel like I'm about to play. The guys had a great off season. Did a tremendous job with our program, and we get to put the pads on again. The guys did a great job in spring. They know the playbook more. They're in better shape. They're physically have gotten better. So we're looking to see how they carry over the off season into to the season, man. So I'm excited, man. I'm anxious to see how we do this year.
And I know when you got hired here, it's right in that portal season, and then you get right into spring ball. Have you had time to kind of adjust to life here in Denton and UNT? Have you time to go out and kind of look at anything?
Yeah, I have. I'm thankful. People, as soon as I got here, the family, the family atmosphere was present. I was luckily a lot of my mentors, actually two of my mentors, Chris Gilbert and Tashard Choice. They said this is one of their favorite jobs. So they kind of gave me the lay of the land, told me about the people here, told me about the city, and I embrace it. It reminds me a lot of my hometown in Florida. I'm thankful for the Den community. I've been enjoying my time here, and I had a month off, because this is, July is our kind of our time to recoup and rest, and I enjoyed it.
So as a general manager, that's a very more of a new role around college football. What is during the season or even during the big parts of the off season? What's a day to day kind of look like for you as the GM?
Well, it just depends on what season we're in. So, like for example, like you said, the transfer portal season. During that time, early in the year, man, we're looking at film. We're checking the portal daily, seeing hey, what guys can help us. That was kind of a daily thing, man. The portal was a short window, so we had guys in and out. Um, I think we have about 100 guys roll through. So that's kind of the beginning of the year. Then we start high school recruiting. We got guys going on the road, coaches doing evaluations, sending it back to our department, doing evals, kind of building our board, and seeing hey, these guys will be a great fit for us, sending out offers. And then in the summertime, it's all about those high school guys, those guys who we scouted earlier in the year. We're bringing them on for official visits, man, and showing them that hey, UNT is the place to go. We had a successful run with our high school guys this summer. Had a good hit rate with the guys we had, and so now with us returning, we're doing a lot of internal scouting of our team. Just making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, kind of seeing hey, this what fits here, this what fits here, and then also preparing for the season. We're going to have high school guys coming. Making sure our commits are coming to the games. Also, the guys who are the 28 class doing early evaluations on there, sending the coaches out in the season whenever we can to go scout guys, and then it'll circle back. We'll be right back in portal in a couple months. So that's pretty much it. My job entails just overall oversight of the personnel department and recruiting department. And then, in the new landscape of football, we deal with revenue sharing and NIL, and that's a part that I deal with as well.
There's been a lot of general managers across college football that have come from really high rankings, and it seems to be a very multi-million-dollar job almost for some of those really big schools. But you are one of the ones that have a lot of playing experience.
Mhm.
You played at Georgia Tech. How do you feel like some of that playing experience, especially in being an offensive lineman, kind of translates to what you're doing right now?
That's a really good question. I love ball. I came from a coaching family. My dad was a high school head coach for many years in Florida. Had some Hall of Famers, and so just coming from that coaching background, coming from playing, we have a good sense of the game. And it's easy to tell. No ball. People say ball. I've done it. I've done it where I've coached, and I've done it on this side. And I think it gives me a good radar, good sense of a player. I'm not saying that I'm perfect in all those things, but I surround myself with guys, who have those talents and who can eval other positions. I take pride in the defensive and offensive line. Playing in the trenches is important. So when it comes to evaluating kids on the offensive defensive line, that's kind of like my baby. I want to make sure that we're stronger. I've been fortunate enough to play on some really good offensive lines, and coach some, and being at places where I was in this recruiting role, personnel role, where we had some really good offensive lines. So I know what it looks like, and like I really truly take pride in that.
So you were on that Georgia Tech team that beat Florida State, that
Yeah,
blocked field goal. So what was that kind
yeah,
of like? Because that's one of the more famous upsets in college football history.
man,
Y'all struggled that year. What was that like?
man, that was crazy. It was a crazy year because we came off such a high from the year before. Man, we were uh, Orange Bowl champs, went to the ACC championship, and the chips didn't fall how we wanted to that next year. But it was kind of personal for me because we every time we played Florida State, they beat us, and then of course, from me being from Florida, I always wanted to beat those guys. And the cool thing is, I played with guys who I played against in high school or who I knew personally. But that was an amazing game. Like it's still one of the craziest things I ever witnessed. And my parents were there. They jumped down from the stands. Man, we had fun that night too. That was one of my best college nights. Man, we talk about that all the time, man. Like, when people talk about, hey, were you on that team? Like, yeah, I was there. I was probably one of the first ones on the field. When those guys scored that touchdown, man. But that was an awesome experience, man. Something I remember for the rest of my life.
So and that kind of segues a little bit into I noticed y'all played Mississippi State in that bowl game the year before. Did you line up against Chris Jones? Is
Oh
that
man,
someone?
listen. Not only was it Chris Jones, man, they had like three guys on that
Mhm.
defensive front. So one of the guys too was Bernard McKinney.
Yeah,
He was a
yeah,
first rounder.
yeah.
I got a pancake on him like second play of the game. We set the tone like that was like one of the most talented teams that we've ever played. Of course, Dak Prescott was they were number one half that year. But that definitely was one of the most talented teams. And one of the coolest things about that game is the fact that we had so much fun um, during that week down there at the Orange Bowl, just team bonding. And I think we kind of already knew in our head that these guys weren't going to beat us because one thing about us, we were physical. That's one thing our head coach taught us. And then the cool thing is, too, that whole offensive line was a bowl team All-American. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool that all off the front five and six, actually, the guy who rotated in as well, we got bowl game All-American. So that's on my resume. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. We'll keep going into the career span up to this point, and I think one of the biggest things is you got a lot of experience with your alma mater in Georgia Tech.
Mhm.
What was that kind of like to go back to a school like that, and especially be in those director of player personnel and kind of see yourself elevate?
Man, it was a dream come true. This to speak about just something in general, kind of when I got the job before I got there at Alabama, and I had an interview with Coach Saban. I told him, hey, my dream job is to go back to Georgia Tech, be the general manager, and help run the personnel at Georgia Tech. And 8 months later, I was there. I was fortunate enough to get that job, and I was familiar with Coach Key. I was his graduate assistant. And he gave me the opportunity to come back and do that. Man, it was just surreal. I think the coolest thing about it not only was being there at your alma mater, but helping build that program back to how it should be. Especially those 2 years I was there. Getting Haynes King, Eric Singleton, a whole bunch of guys. Keelan Rutledge, who was ended up being a first rounder for the Houston Texans. It was great building that roster. And then the third year, I ended up taking a job at Texas. But that third year, seeing those guys last year with essentially the guys who we helped put together, it was an unbelievable experience, man. And I love Georgia Tech to death, and definitely thankful for the opportunity. The opportunity prepared me to come into this seat that I'm in now.
And one of the major things that stuck out to me, you got to be the assistant director of player personnel at Alabama. What was that kind of like to be able to work under Nick Saban and that whole operation that Alabama has going?
It was an awesome opportunity. I'm thankful for a guy who I was a graduate assistant with at Georgia Tech. He hit me one day when I was actually working at UConn. I was working at UConn those first 3 months. He said, "Hey man, you want to come to Alabama?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm here, but I'll give you my resume." And within 3 days, I was hired. But just to see the standard um, of how they operated there, man, and it was some crazy, crazy guys on that roster, man. I really think they should have won a national championship. You got to think you got Jameer Gibbs, Bryce Young,
Mhm.
um, Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, all those guys, man, and just to see the work that internally from Saban, seeing those guys on the uh, coaching field, and really learning how what made Alabama Alabama. And I think the biggest thing was that Coach Saban signed off on every kid. He watched every kid. So um, there was no like deviation of the standard. Like
Yeah.
you got to think that class too that they had there, some major guys who they got within that class. While I was there, that was number one recruit class
Yep.
actually that year. It was just awesome to see and be a part of it. And just like I said, learning the standard, learning what to look for, and seeing what it looks like with those guys there. And I still take some of the things that I learned there and apply it to my daily stuff here.
What are some of those small
Yeah,
things that you might imply here daily, especially in this a
yeah.
little bit low, a little bit smaller of an operation compared to what Alabama has?
I think the biggest thing is just knowing having a standard each day. What that means is how we operate. That we're going to give our all and everything we do. And then another thing is too that there's nothing too small. What do I mean by that? From just how you carry yourself, there's no job too small. And that's just I preach that to my staff. I'll never ask you to do anything that I want to do myself. And that was kind of the same thing there. And just the ins and outs of efficiency, being efficient with the processes, and establishing the processes early. So now we know that that's the standard, and that's how we're going to do it every single time.
Do you a lot of people have some Saban stories. Do you have
Yeah.
a Saban story that you remember specifically?
I got a good one, and
Okay.
it necessarily doesn't involve direct with Saban, but something to do with him. So, I like to dress nice. My dad was a principal, so I seen him wear suits and stuff every day. And so I'm gonna make this make sense. So, Saban dressed up every day, hard bottoms, slacks, everything like that. So Saban would come in at the same time every day, like 7:20. Staff meeting started at 7:30. And so, one day I wear some hard bottoms, all right, and you can hear him coming in, right? He got these hard bottoms on, loafers, and he walks in. And so you hear it, who's in, who that he's coming. So one day I wore some loafers, right? Mom got me some loafers that couldn't wait to wear them, and so the defensive staff meeting room was right, close to coach's office, right? So they're always on their toes. You want to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do when Coach Saban comes by. So I just happened to walk by. I got these hard bottoms on. They hear me come, right? And so I walk into to past the D staff room, and everybody's eyes are like big like this. And so then I think it might have been Pete Golden, the defense coordinator. He said, "Hey, Joe, let me come holler at you." He said, "Don't wear them no more. Don't wear them no more." We were scared. We thought Saban was coming around. They might have been goofing off or whatever in there, but
Yeah.
everybody's eyes was big because they thought Saban was coming around the corner. But the cool thing was seeing him interact in meetings, and people would text me like, "Hey, you see Saban?" I'm like, "I see him every day at staff meetings." But just learned a lot from him, man. He's an awesome dude. Him, Miss Terry, man, awesome experience, awesome stories there. And I think the cool thing is too seeing where guys from that staff are now. You know, some guys are still there. You got to think OC Bill O'Brien. He's at Boston College. Holman Wiggins was the receiver coach. Now he's the OC at Texas. Texas A&M. P. Golden was the DC. Now he's the head coach of Ole Miss. So just seeing where everybody from that staff has gone, man, just speaks to kind of how my philosophy, man. You want to equip and launch, and to keep developing, and using that as a launch pad.
And your most recent stop was at Texas, director of scouting. You worked alongside with Coach Sark, and now that you're in this GM role, the NIL kind of the revenue salary cap, in a sense, the
Mhm.
21.3 million has gone to effects with the House settlement. And he was at media days. He complained a little bit about the salary cap and how he had to cut some guys and things like that to make things work. You know, what do you kind of think about this cap that college football added? Is this something that you, as a GM, is helpful, or what do you kind of see with this cap that college football has?
I think it just depends, man, where you're at. Everybody, one thing you got to know exactly like what do you want to do as your program? Some programs require you got to, reach outside and do, other ways to make stuff happen. But just once you know what your program is and how you fit, and then being in alignment with your athletic department. I'm thankful we have a great athletic director here, and Jared Mosley.
Mm-hmm.
And so just making sure you're aligned and knowing, hey, this is what, my projection is, this is my, what I believe, and just being aligned and aligning the program with that. So, I can't speak for every program, but it all depends on your identity and how you want to build a roster. I know I'm thankful to have some great resources here with Jared to help us build what we want to build. Now, everybody's pot's a little different, but it's all about how you build and doing it the right way.
For sure. And, obviously rosters these days are built more financially. Obviously, there's certain things that can't be revealed.
Mhm.
But, how are rosters typically constructed, especially this
Yeah.
North Texas roster constructed with how many moving parts that you have
Yeah.
in the NIL world?
I think the biggest thing is knowing where you want to invest in.
Mhm.
So I'm a firm believer in it starts up front, and that's where it is. Those the line of scrimmages is what controls. Really, you think about the conferences, the bigger conferences like is won and lost, and the trenches. And then when you want to expound out of that, quarterback play is big as well. And then just figuring out what other pieces and how you want to mix and match and put the puzzle pieces together. But I know that the biggest investment I feel is important is in that line of scrimmage.
Yeah. For sure. And, a lot of guys that have come in here this past off season had some sort of relationship with a coach or a staff member. How big are these past relationships in this
Man,
day and age?
they're huge. They're huge, man. When guys hit the portal, I think the biggest thing that they want to look for is familiarity. And so with everybody who came in, there was always people coming to my office and say, "Hey, man, there's a kid who I coached before who's in the portal." And they have that relationship. I was able to pull on some relationships I had from Texas, even Georgia Tech. Dre Thurman had great relationships where he was at Georgia Southern, West Kentucky. All the other coaches, like, hey, there's a kid maybe who I missed before, who who's in the portal now. That thing's huge because the kids want to go somewhere where they feel like home and feel comfortable. I know there's other aspects of it, but at the end of the day, they're going to make a decision based on how they feel. And if they feel like, hey, this is the great fit for me, and this is a place I can thrive, they're going to pull the trigger. And so I was thankful to have a great group of coaches who bound together. Coach Ben Black had some guys that he coached at his previous stop who said, hey man, I want to continue on with coach because he developed me and I have a relationship with him. But all those coaches had different relationships with guys, whether it be them being from even DFW area. Perfect example also too is Coach Gates being the head coach at North Crowley. He knows all these kids in this area, and they want to go somewhere where like, hey man, I seen what North Crowley did. Coach Gates did a great job with those dudes. I want him to coach me. So it was a great combination of teamwork to get these guys in.
Yeah, and you mentioned Coach Gates. I was just about to ask, because high school recruiting here at DFW is massive, and these days it feels like the portal is starting to overtake a little bit more of high school recruiting than it ever has. How do you feel like you guys, as a staff, have been able to kind of make it more of a balance, especially involving some of these really talented high school kids?
I think it was coach from the start saying that, hey, we're going to build this thing through this DFW area and players from Texas. When he first got here, he said this is a great area, a recruiting area. and he said, "Hey, look, we're going to build this thing the right way. What does that mean? We're going to take 20 plus high school kids. We're going to build this thing because we know the great players come from this area. Now we're going to have to dig into the portal because this is a place where guys go and ball out. And we try our best to retain them. Just being honest, we're going to try our best to retain them. But we know that there's always going to be an influx of talent in and out of this area and in and out of this school. So we want to make sure that we're still developing guys in high school and taking the best athletes that we can in high school so we can continue to build this thing. I'm a firm believer in building this thing through high school. That'll never stop here.
Yeah, and a lot of people, including us, we love covering high school recruiting. So that's always great to hear. And I think, one of the things that I've always been thinking about is, how does a GM like yourself kind of quantify their success or impact both individually and as well as just conjunctioning and overall team goals?
I think the biggest thing too, before we get into wins and losses and their player, I want to make sure the kid's happy. Seeing guys come here from different, situations. Maybe they came here because, hey, they wanted more playing time or they wanted just a fresh start. Seeing them smile and seeing them interact with other teams, teammates and things like that, to me, that's already a success, that they're in a better situation. And then, like I said, we'll be going over during camp of just self-scouting, seeing, making sure that our return on investment is doing what it's supposed to do. And we really believe that these guys who we brought in here in this short period of time are guys who are going to do that because not only are they hungry, but they're humble and they're smart, and they're ready to play and ready to make an impact. And so we'll definitely get a great measuring stick first game of the year, and just seeing those guys compete. That's the biggest thing. Them going out there, seeing them have fun, seeing them compete, seeing them get interceptions, making big plays, and coming to the sideline and coming to holler at me and letting them know, like, hey, this is the reason why you're here, because you came here to make plays and win, and at the end of the day, develop.
And the season opener is against the reigning national champions, and for your role, it feels like a game like this on the national television, a lot of spotlight is a big deal for the program. How important, obviously, wins and losses, that comes and goes, but how important is a game like this just to show off why North Texas should be a premier school for people to come to?
I think the biggest thing is just knowing that this is a great opportunity. And when I was getting guys in the transfer portal, I told them, look, man, you came here, for a fresh start, something new, and there's no bigger stage than doing it first play of the game. You coming from a small school or coming from where you didn't have a lot of playing time or opportunity, and you make a play on the biggest stage in the nation, and they're screaming your name on TV. What more could you ask for? It's a great opportunity for all positions. To shine. And the thing is, if you dominate your one-on-one, do what you're supposed to do, people are going to take notice. And not only that, you came here to compete, and there's no better stage to compete. You wanted to play against the best. Well, here you go. And I think our guys are excited for that challenge. They're excited that, hey, this is a national stage. North Texas did a hell of a job last year, and they deserve to be on this stage. And I'm excited about this opportunity for our guys to be on that stage now.
And you talked about the tight windows you get in the portal. As a general manager, what is the kind of a strategy you guys take, or as a staff as a whole, to be able to recruit the player, but also recruit that family, even if it's in high school or the portal? What's that strategy like?
It's all about creating a world-class experience. When they come here, you might get 24 hours. It's almost like speed dating. But you got 24 hours to build relationships. A lot of time there are relationships before, but it's the time to really get a chance to get to know the people. And really over that time, you break bread, you have food with them, you'll have breakout times. And during that time, man, we're asking important questions. What's important to you? What's important to the family? What are some goals you have? And taking all those things and aligning it, excuse me. And then by the time, they have their meeting with me, we're putting all that together and figuring out, hey, what's the best plan of action? How do we want to approach this thing? But like I said, it is a quick window. But the emphasis on us having relationships with the guys and really trying to pour into them and seeing what's important is huge for us. And that's something that we want to continue to do when we go next year into the portal, is making sure that, hey, we're making sure that the right guys for us. There were guys who came in who were like, hey, this guy might not be for us. But that's, you're able to identify that. And it's by committee. It's not just one person. It's everybody having a hands-on when they get on campus. People who might be, involved are seeing things that somebody might not be involved in. You're making sure that you're seeing things, and if you're catching things because everybody's around each other, and noticing things and taking note of the family and the players.
Obviously you've been hired in December. You've been through the portal class. You've been through the recruiting so far. What are some challenges or even successes that you face as a GM? Kind of monthly.
It's like I said, man. It's almost like a fever dream. How fast it was, man. It was, late hours, long nights. But I think the one thing that did help me is having relationships with other GMs, because during that time, the market is crazy. What I mean by that, you have all these allocations. You want to make sure they get properly. But I think I relied a lot on my friends in the industry saying, hey, man, what do you think about this? And being honest with each other. There's some guys who we were competing with, and we were just making sure we were having honest conversations about where we stand and how we feel. Or even if there was somebody we had say, hey, man, this guy might not be for us, but he might be helpful for you. And the thing is, once you establish your process and you have a really good staff, I have a great staff. I have an unbelievable staff. It worked like clockwork. We all mesh together. And we're able to run through this thing because we know each other. We know what it takes. We all been at different levels. And, we all want the ultimate goal. We want the best players to be at North Texas. And when they get on campus, we hit them through the process. We bring them in and out, and we evaluate them, do all these things, and everybody's on the same page. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it was that was helpful for us to be successful in that small period of time, everybody being on the same page.
For sure. And, you mentioned you talked with Chris Gilbert and Choice, who were both at Texas and also at North Texas. What was most appealing about joining the staff with Coach Brown and even coming to UNT?
I think the biggest thing was good people. Everybody, has different paths, through this thing. And when I met with Coach Brown and, I had interaction with him when I was at Texas, I trusted him because I believe he was a great person. He was a great human being. I followed him before, while he was at Troy, while he was at West Virginia. And then also Chad Scott was kind of a big factor in my decision. So I've known Chad my whole life. So basically our cities where we're from are right next to each other. His aunt is the pastor's wife at my church. So he actually offered me when I was in high school. So I've known him my whole life. And then, when he offered me the opportunity, Neil did, I went to Choice. I'm sorry, not with Choice. I went to Coach Chad. And I said, hey, man, I never worked with Neil before. I'm saying, how is he? He said, he's an amazing dude. I said, don't say anything else.
Awesome. I mean, that's a big deal, especially with Coach Brown's experience. You look at the rest of this conference, there's a lot of teams that stack up higher than North Texas in revenue and NIL and donors, et cetera. But what do you feel like Coach Brown brings to the table that kind of negates that and lets North Texas be the premier brand in this conference?
I think he's a hell of a coach. I believe that he's a guy who has a chip on the shoulder. He's led offenses to unbelievable numbers. And he's done well wherever he's at. And I truly believe that he's gonna turn it up, especially offensively. And then the fact that, hey, he made some great hires. He made some incredible hires with our coaches, and we have just a great staff put together that's going to put these guys in the best position to win. And I'm excited to see Coach dial it up.
For sure. And last question before we wrap things up. You mentioned you obviously played offensive line. Has there been a moment in time recently you just want to go out there and start practicing with those guys, with Coach Black out there? Because I see them doing those sled drills and all those things. Is that something you feel an urge sometimes, or is that you kind of
Well, I think the cool thing is And it just speaks to the kind of kids we are. Kids do their research. So some of the guys, offensive line, they'll come up to me. It's like, oh yeah, we might pull up a game or something that I played in, or say they know I played. And so then, I think the really cool part, because I still got a little coach in me, say there's some drills, and I'm thankful for Coach Maddox for even letting me do that, and Coach Jeremy Jones, pulling the kids to the side, like, hey, maybe work on this, or maybe, hey, this is what I would do. Because I still got a little coach in me. I'm really thankful that they let me do that, because there's moments where I'll be like, hey, change this up. When I struggle with this is what I did. So just being able to still be a part of the game, and the kids actually being, I'm Unc now. So they'll say like, hey, Joe, help, coach me. They always want some, outside sources. Say, hey, what do you see? Saying that just lets me know they trust my eye, and they have trust in me. So I think that's really cool, whether it's offense, defense. One of the cool things, I had Tay Seymour. I had Tay Seymour at Georgia Tech, who was a great player for us there. He was rushing the passer. He's a safety, and he comes on the edge, and I say, hey, look, hey, as a tackle, I play tackle, do this right here. This makes it really hard for us. And then seeing him go on the next drill and do what I coached him or told him, just a little tip, and it's success. That's the stuff I love to see. Like I said, it goes back to just the guys having trust in you. And that's what I love about the game, man. This game's given me so much, and I love to give back.
That's awesome. It seems like you have a lot of respect, and I appreciate you sitting down with me today. This was a great little chat, and obviously good luck with the rest of fall camp and going into the season, and should be a great time. But as always, go Mean Green.
Go Mean Green, man. I appreciate your time. Looking forward to seeing you at the game.
Yeah. I'll be at all fall camp. Youll see me every single time fall camp. Oh yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.